This is a group of photos that show ways that we in CPT engage with the conflicts of the situation. For example, often, again, this is these are mostly in Hebron, or just outside of Hebron, like this photo. As we're just going through town or going to meetings or whatever, you run into situations where there's something going on, and we often step in. Other times it's more violent stuff going on, and we step in there too. An example is here is Israeli settler kids that are attacking a Palestinian woman who is going from she'd been in the market and was going back home. And the soldiers that are there, the Israeli soldiers, they sort of told the settler kids stop doing that, but they really didn't do anything to physically stop the kids doing it. And so an interesting thing was when we appeared, myself and another CPTer, when we appeared there, it's what I call the grandmother effect. You're doing something you shouldn't be doing, and grandma walks into the room. Generally, that changes the bad behavior. The soldiers had just been standing there until they saw us coming. And here we are with cameras and documenting what was happening. And they immediately then stepped in. They didn't stop the kids from attacking the lady, but they did intervene somewhat. And our presence helped make a difference in that situation. Same thing with this photo here. Here was a lady that lives on a farm outside of Hebron, and she was trying to return to her home. And the soldiers had declared that area under curfew, which for us, that means, you got to be home at a certain time. For Palestinians, it can mean 24 hours a day house arrest, and maybe go on for a month or two. And so it's very, very harsh. So she was coming back and trying to get back to her home, and she's pointing, saying, I just live right here. And the soldiers are saying, no, go back. You're not allowed to pass through. And again, our presence, made the soldiers think they're documenting what we're doing. We better not do it. And they ended up letting us escort the woman to her house and stuff. Then this photo here is another example. I actually took this for one reason, and turns out there's another story I'd like to tell about it. This is them imposing curfew. And as I mentioned, that's very harsh. And curfew had been in place for, I think, 7 or 8 days prior to this. And they allowed the merchants and stuff to open their shops for 4 hours that morning. And then at the end of 4 hours, they were coming, forcing everybody to close their shops. And you can see these guys, they sell pottery and high quality silverware and dishes and stuff. And so they weren't making much money. They weren't doing hardly any business, because in the short period of time curfew's lifted, not many people's going to say, oh, I need new silverware, and run out and buy it. But it was a chance for them to at least maybe make some money and to show, hey, we have a right to be here. This is our home. This is our shop. We have a right to be here. So they're telling the soldiers, just give us 5 more minutes to finish putting stuff away. And Greg Rollins, the CPTer, has his hand on the door holding it open. And the soldiers kind of yelling, get out of here, CPT, it's none of your business. And we're like, no, it is our business. If, you have to let these people, have a life, And so we're engaging in that way. And you can see, in CPT, we try to stay real laid back and not escalate the violence with our words or actions. And so Greg's just standing there kind of calmly and engaging as the soldiers kind of yelling at him. And so when I took this photo, I was there too, and Greg was doing a good job taking the lead role there. And so I was taking photos to document what was happening. And I thought this was a great picture to tell that story about how curfew's imposed and how shopkeepers suffer under that. And what I hadn't noticed was Ahmed. I remembered him walking through the area that day, but when I got back home and uploaded his photos, there's Ahmed in this photo. And I thought about, this picture's really about him. I think he was 12 or 13 at that time. And here's this 12, 13-year-old boy coming into an area. He can't go to school that day because of the curfew that's in place. He can't go play with his friends on the playground because curfew's in place. His dad and mom can't go to work because curfew's imposed. And here he is coming by an area where merchants have to close their shop because somebody's got a gun and says, we're in charge, we have power, you have to do what we want. And I wonder what kind of message we're sending him. You know, is this going to make him want to be friends with Israelis if these are the only kind of Israelis he grows up seeing? Now, he's lucky. His father has lots of Israeli friends and engages with a lot of Israelis and stuff. And so he sees the other side. But I think about those kids that don't see that other side of it. What's the story they're going to come away with, and how is that going to affect them long term? And are we telling him, hey, you ought to get a gun so you have more power? I mean, that's not the message we need to send in these conflict areas. We need to send an area that we're good people on all sides, and we can work together, and the good people can override the bad people. And so we need to do that. And hopefully that's the role model Greg is showing. Here I can step in and say, no, we're not going to let you close these guys up until they get their stuff put away. And so I like that photo a lot, as you can probably tell from the way I talk about it. But yeah, I took that for the one story, and it turned out when I got to looking at it, the other story might be the more important one. Then this photo here is of an Israeli soldier. Myself and Greg actually were walking through on our way to a meeting, and we heard a few blocks over shouting and screaming and yelling, and we knew something was going on, so we went over to see. I mean, the joke is CBTers are like moths drawn to a light. When we hear violence and stuff, we're drawn there to try to go do something and change the situation. And when we get there, there's about a dozen Israeli soldiers, and they have about 15 or 16 Palestinian men, some who were on their way home from the university, others that were on their way home from work, and they were beating them in this alley, so, again, the grandmother effect takes place. We show up, and the soldiers stop that, and they line the men up along the wall, and they're checking their IDs. They said, that's all we were doing. And, like this guy with the check shirt, his back of his head's all bloody and stuff, and others were damaged and stuff. And so I went down the line taking individual photos, but also group photos. And I moved down here to shoot the whole line of people being detained there. And when I did, this soldier stepped in front of me and he told me, if you take another photo, I'll shoot you. So I took this photo. Now, there's times I've been in situations where I thought, I'm going to be killed here. And should I take my camera and toss it off to the side and hope somebody finds it to find out what was happening? Or should I hold on to my camera near my body so when they kill me, I fall and have the camera there, and when hopefully somebody will see the pictures and figure out what was happening? In this situation, I was pretty sure this soldier wasn't going to shoot me, because he and I had some conversations a few days before. He was stationed at a checkpoint, and so what we do, we interact with Palestinians and the families in the shops, in the markets, and the soldiers, they're at checkpoints. We talk to them and try to hear, what's your story? What are you doing? Is the military a career for you, or are you just here because you have to serve 3 years? Or, what's the story? And I didn't talk to him on that level. And of course, he was asking the same thing. Why are you here? He told me, he said, you're lucky here. We could do a lot of violence to you, but your country, United States, provides our country with billions of dollars in aid. A lot of these weapons we have, you provide state-of-the-art weapons, the bombs and planes that we use, we're indebted to you. So if I do something harmful to you, they're going to throw the book at me, And so I hate using any kind of privilege. I mean, just in my daily life, I'm a white male, and that gives me privileges that I didn't earn, I don't deserve. and I try not to use for my own gain. But sometimes in a situation where maybe you can help others, you push that issue. So I'm willing to use that U.S. citizen card in a situation like this. So after I took this photo, he and I had a little heated conversation, and finally he told the people, okay, you can go, and they let the men go. Then you never know how these engagements with people are going to turn out. And you always hope for the best, but sometimes there's extreme situations. And that's what this guy is. This is Avi. And I saw Avi shoot a 5-year-old at one point. I saw him do all kind of brutal things to people. And in this photo here, he actually has the barrel of his gun in my ribs, and I'm holding my camera up here and taking the picture. And yeah, Avi was a pretty nasty person overall. About 2 weeks later, we were engaged in a situation where they were doing all kind of beatings and stuff of civilians, and we interposed, and Avi beat me up. And then a month or so later, we were engaged in another thing, and I don't know how he didn't shoot some of us, but again, they used the guns to beat us and stuff, but we overrode the situation that was there. And over time, I kept, we're engaged with Avi all the time. He was always in the midst of this stuff. And he had I forget how his rank was, but he was part of what they call the border police, which are soldiers that have military power and presence, but they also are exempt from normal prosecution and stuff. So they can get by with extra things. And so in engaging with Avi over time, I started asking him personal questions, like, what would you think if this was your brother that somebody was doing to? What if this was your sister or your mom? How would you feel about that? And at first he just ignored, and then over time sometimes we'd be stuck in places where the conversation would go on for hours, and you could have a conversation kind of. And he started, talking more about his own personal feelings, and I got to know him a little bit, and started, engaging him on that level and asking, how's your family? How's your cousin? How's your mom? And he started changing his attitude towards how he was dealing with us. And I'd also talk to, he'd always ask, well, why are you guys here? What right do you have to be here interfering in our business? And would say, well, we're here to make friends with all of you. We want you and Palestinians both to be friends. We don't want to see you, people are threatened to kill you, because of the things you've done. And we don't want that. We want you to live a good life too. And we want them to live a good life. And so when you're doing things that are impeding their good life, we feel we need to step in and try to change that. And so we started having these real deeper and deeper conversations. And we actually got to be kind of friends. And then I didn't see Avi for a while. And I asked one day one of the border police, where's Avi? What's he doing? And they said, well, his current term came up, and he had told me he was planning on re-enlisting and going on. He'd been in the military, I think, 9 or 10 years at the time of this photo. And, they said he decided not to re-enlist. And so I bumped into him in Tel Aviv, just accidentally, passing him on the street, and didn't recognize him without his uniform, which was kind of funny. And he told me, he said, I thought a lot about what you've said and what I saw you guys doing, and, what we were doing isn't really making peace. We need to do something different. And, friends of mine had been killed in the conflict, and I don't want that either, And so he became part of a group called Breaking the Silence, which is a group of former soldiers who speak out about the things they saw, the things they did, And some of the stories they've told are just amazing. And they try to help, educate people on this isn't, what we're doing isn't making peace. To have peace, we need to transcend the conflict. So, yeah, I would never have believed Avi would be part of that, but there he is.